Hi readers, Chris here. Today I'm doing another episode of Fantasy and Face Masks. Even though technically one of these books isn't fantasy, it's technically a dystopia, but hey, my channel, my rules. Tonight I'm going to be doing this Mighty Marshmallow face mask from Bliss. So I'm going to put this mask on my face and I'm going to talk to you about The Elite by Kira Cass. This is the second book in the Selection series. And A Grimm Warning by Chris Colfer. This is the third book in the Land of Stories series. I'm going to start off with The Elite, and since I cannot hold this and put this on with one hand, I'll just put a picture up here while I talk about it. So, like I mentioned, The Elite is the second book in the Selection series. And if for some reason you are not familiar with this series, it is a dystopian YA series where basically this world, it's like our world, except there's like a monarchy basically, and everyone is divided into these castes. So like any typical dystopian story, there's always, the people at the lower caste and then the people in the higher caste. In this world, the castes are numbered. So with ones being kind of like the rich and the wealthy caste, and then 8 being the lowest of the low. But every so often, there is this process called the selection. And what the selection is it is a competition between all of the kingdom's most eligible girls, and they compete for the chance to marry the prince. That's right, 35 girls competing for the love of one prince. This series is basically the Hunger Games meets The Bachelor. The Hunger Games meets The Bachelor, if you're familiar with The Bachelor TV show here in the US. So when The Elite starts, there's already been a bunch of eliminations in the selection so far in the previous book, and now the competition is down to 6 top girls. What I really like about this book, even though on the surface it has a very silly concept, that sounds very trivial, and in the first book it kind of is a bit silly and a bit trivial. But in this book, in this second one, The Elite, things just go to another level. They go to another level in terms of the drama between the characters. It goes to another level in terms of the world building. There's a lot more it expands greatly outside of just the actual selection competition, where there's rebels, there's northern rebels, there's southern rebels, and there's just a lot of fun things. There's some scenes in the book that are more violent than they were in the first book. I mean, you may think the selection, how violent could that possibly be? But girls competing against each other can get a little out of hand sometimes. And another thing I really like about this book is just the plot in general. Now that the selection has been narrowed down to these 6 girls, we really get a chance to know them all a lot better. We met a couple of them, got to know a couple of them in the first one, but we really get to know them here, and we get to know them a lot more deeply, which is super fun. So this book has great characters, great world building, and a fast-moving plot, which means that I think I actually like The Elite better than I liked the selection. I still liked the selection. I thought it was really fun, but I actually think I like book 2 better. We'll have to wait and see how book 3 goes. Jack wanted to come see what I'm doing, but he's probably going to be terrified by my face. He's like, oh my God, did you just lick that? Did you just lick my face? Jack, you're not supposed to be licking Mama's face, but that's okay. That's okay. All right, I know, you're trying to get out of the room. Okay, be right back. Okay, I'm supposed to leave this on for 10 to 15 minutes before I rinse it off. I don't know if I can talk that long about this second book, but we'll see how it goes. So the other book I wanted to talk about is A Grimm Warning, which is the third book in the Land of Stories series. If you're not familiar with the series, it's basically about two young children, Connor and Alex. They are twins, and in the first book, they discover that there is this alternate world called the Land of Stories. So it is your basic Portal fantasy, except in this version, it's these, middle grade characters, and they basically fall into like Mother Goose's storybook. So in the Land of Stories, there's like Snow White's kingdom, Cinderella's kingdom, Sleeping Beauty's kingdom, etc., etc., etc. In book 1, they basically fought the evil queen, like think Snow White's mother. In book 2, they fought the Enchantress, which is basically their version of Maleficent. And in this book, there is a new, we'll say, villain that they have to deal with. It's going to be a little bit difficult to talk about the plot of this book without giving away some spoilers for the previous ones, but I'll do my best to keep it as vague as possible. At the ending of the previous book, the book ends, the heroes have won, but our two siblings here, Connor and Alex, are in very different places. And up until that point in the series, that has not happened before. So when this book starts, Connor and Alex are not together. They're in completely separate locations, and they are on completely separate character arcs, which I really enjoyed. I really loved. I thought it was time for them to develop into their own characters. I know they're still young. They're still only 12, 13 years old, but they are starting to grow up as the series goes along. They are getting older, and they are starting to deal with things like hormones. Alex meets a young boy that she has a very sweet relationship with. Again, it's only a middle grade fantasy, so nothing serious or hardcore, but just a very sweet relationship where she's starting to realize that maybe she likes boys and maybe she feels a certain way. It's just really cute. So all that to say, I really appreciate that Connor and Alex are firmly established as their own characters, as their own unique people, and they go on their own journeys in this book. They have different story arcs, and yes, they do team up at some point in the book to, fight off the big bad. But for the majority of the book, they do have their own story arcs. So let's talk about the quote-unquote big bad for a minute. So our evil villain in this book is the general of this army that's basically been gone for 200 years. So long story short, back in the time of the Brothers Grimm, there was this army and this general who wanted to take over not only the actual physical our world, but the Land of Stories as well. And because they could not defeat this army, they basically got sent on a side quest, basically, a 200-year side quest, for lack of a better term. All of a sudden, though, they find out that this side quest is now over and this army is reappearing. This army is going to take over both the Land of Stories and our real world. Now, the secret of where this army came from, how they ended up, 200 years in the future, there's a lot of backstory in this book, a lot of backstory. In fact, there is so much backstory that there's actually a timeline in the beginning of the book. In the other books, they had maps, but this one has a timeline of events that outline when the fairy godmother first met the Brothers Grimm, what happened to this army, and various things that have happened along the everything that is canon to this story, which I think is really interesting, I wasn't sure where they could go after the previous book. Yes, they've fought all these classic fairy tale villains. Can we do something new? And this is definitely something new and different. The general in charge of this army is not a fairy tale character. He's just a guy from our universe that just happened to end up in this crazy location with all this crazy stuff going on. So I really appreciate that. Overall, this series is just super cute and super fun. If I had to pick, it's really hard to say if this book is my favorite or one of the previous ones because I read this one most recently. I feel like I do have a bit of recency bias. I really enjoyed the first one. I think the first one and then this one are probably tied for my favorites, and then the second one, The Enchantress Returns, is probably my least favorite of the series so far. Now, if you saw my wrap-up video, I am not continuing with this series right now because I don't have any other books. Hoping to find some in my bargain book hunting because I've gotten all of these books as bargain books. If I can't find them after a certain amount of time, I probably will cave. I think that's been about 10 minutes, so I'm gonna go wash this off my face really quick and then wrap up this video. So much better. It feels a bit sticky, but I mean, I literally just did it, so I need to let it dry for a minute, but I love masks that are easy on, easy off. In conclusion, these are both great books in the series. I would have to say, if I had to pick between the two of them, I think I would have to say I liked the Elite better, but I still enjoyed A Grimm Warning, and I think this is a great addition to the Land of Stories series. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.